You are entering the Nillyverse with your hosts Gustavo Candia and Rodney Parrott. This episode has been brought to you by the Society of Namecoin. No.
All right, I think we're live. Hello, and welcome to. I'll call this entering the Nillyverse, and we'll get into all that in the future. I wanted to start, intros aside, with the syllogism that kind of stuck in my head when I was in university and I'm doing an undergraduate course, and which motivated me actually to first write about nothing.
Okay.
And here's the syllogism. Half a glass of water is greater than nothing. Nothing is greater than total happiness. And so, by the law of transitivity, we should get that half a glass of water is greater than total happiness.
Right.
Now,
remember.
Yeah, this doesn't, obviously the conclusion doesn't follow, or it follows, but it follows incorrectly. It leads us down a wrong path. What's wrong with this? Well, I mean, let's look at the law itself, right? We grant that if 10 is greater than 5 and 5 is greater than 2, then 10 should be greater than 2.
Right, it should be. Yeah,
it should be, right? And it is. Now, why doesn't this follow? I came to the conclusion that the only way to explain this non sequitur is that the two nothings, the nothing in premise 1 and the nothing in premise 2, have to be unequal or different.
Right.
Right?
Be different.
We're using, we're using the same word, but to signify different things. Okay.
Right.
So the nothing of premise 1, half a glass of water is greater than nothing. Well, we can translate that nothing to be, we know what we're trying to do with the first premise. We're trying to compare that, we're trying to say that having half a glass of water is better, right, or greater than not having any water, right?
That's
or
right.
Being left with an empty can or an empty jar or an empty tin,
right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Okay? Whereas the nothing of the second premise, nothing is greater than total happiness, is loosely not anything is greater than total happiness. Is that is that how you see it, Rodney?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Right.
So if nothing, so half a glass is better than none.
Right. And having some water is greater than not having any water. That's right. Okay. Not anything, and this is a subjective comment, right? Not anything is better or greater than total happiness.
Right.
That seems reasonable. But now you see that by having differentiated the two nothings, the nothing of premise 1 and the nothing of premise 2, we can clearly understand why the conclusion, half a glass of water is greater than total happiness, doesn't follow, because they're different nothings.
Right, that's right.
Okay,
right.
So
I don't think I ever understood that before.
Oh, okay, great, wonderful. So we're learning something about how the other. So Rodney and I, we've written a book, Nothing and Nothingness. We just published it, and what we're going to be doing with this video series is going through the book, right? And the way that I'm seeing this is we're going to break it up into subsections, not sections, because the sections are pretty dense, right? So so we're going to break the book up into subsections, and each week we're going to go through the book ourselves, have our sort of notes, and then come back and do this right in front of you with those notes, and Rodney and I are just going to talk it through to see sort of what the other person thinks about what was written in the book. Right?
Yeah, cool.
I think we're going to get a better understanding of about what went through, because the book took 5 years to write.
That's right.
Isn't that incredible, Rodney? 5 years.
Great.
So anyways, that syllogism sort of helps to introduce nothing and nothingness, right?
That's great.
But what I wanted to do is I'm going to start with myself, and then I'm going to ask Rodney to sort of discuss what it was that motivated us to come to write this book. Because I often, I don't know if you get the same reaction from your peers or family when I talk to my family about, or friends for that matter, about that I'm interested in nothing, or I'm writing a book about nothing. They immediately either joke about like Seinfeld,
Yeah.
And I kind of chuckle it off. It's like, no, not that nothing, right? And when my parents are saying more inquisitive and they want to understand, right, why you have these thoughts, right? I start to introduce sort of science and theology and philosophy, and then they kind of sort of say, it seems interesting, right? But I don't really know what the value of it is, right? I guess the one hope for me, right, is that is by going through this, right, and going through this book together, we're going to get to see that this is not just like sort of an exercise in philosophy, which is incredibly valuable, right? But that what we've done here with this book is something of practical value. There's some actual utility that's to be extracted from this text.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll toss it. Maybe we'll start with you, Rodney, and how you kind of came to nothing and nothingness. Where were you before? I believe I approached you to start this journey together. Where were you, and what were you doing?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to be. I'll just talk to what you're talking about right now, but what you've brought up so far is full of all kinds of things. We could talk for the rest of the night just on what you've talked about so far. It
will be hard to keep this. We're going to try to keep this to half an hour, but it's probably going to be hard to do that. And let's shoot for maybe an hour, or between half an hour and an hour. But go ahead.
Well, in the practical realm of it all is that I had been a professional for a long time, and I decided I didn't want to be so much a professional anymore, and I started doing freelance writing. And you approached me through our online agent. I mean, that's the practical aspect of it. But in terms of my relationship to nothing, it goes back to 3 very sort of pivotal moments for me in my life. I mean, I'm right now, I call myself 60-10. I'm 60-10 now, so it's been a little bit of a life. But when I was 20, at the age of 20, I had an explosive event in my life where everything that I had known about myself and about the world disintegrated, shattered. And it took me about 30 years to figure out that experience. And so that was the sort of the opening of it. I often say that I'm not the person I was born as. The other thing that really happened is, because of trying to understand that experience, I went to graduate school, and I studied Asian religions, Asian philosophy, and so forth, as a way of trying to understand what that experience was. And I had been raised in a very religious family, in a Christian family, but it was my experience at the time, although I wouldn't say this now, is that the Eastern religions spoke to that experience better than the West. But I wouldn't say that now. I just didn't know what I was talking about. Anyway, I got a PhD in Asian religions, and the notion of nothing is, of course, central to Buddhism. It's central to Hinduism and so forth. And so I learned a lot about nothing. And what became clear to me is what had happened in that experience when I was 20 years old was that a world, I had been living a life that was prescribed by nothingness. There was the boundaries of my life were nothingness, and it exploded, and I was introduced to nothing in a way that if it didn't kill me, at least it didn't kill me, and it actually made me much better, much more appreciative of what the realm of function of nothingness is in the world. And one of the things where that, the third step is that I was very, very interested in how something comes from nothing, which was, I think, Gustavo, the question you brought when we originally started talking. How does something come from nothing? And I sat down to try to write a novel in order to figure out, well, how is that novel going to come out of nothing? How is that novel going to be born when there was no novel there in the beginning? And what I came up with is that I had to touch, get an insight in order to bring that novel, to start that novel. And that insight came from being awake in nothing. And as we talk along later, we'll see that in the book, there's a six-staged model of insight, which we call outsight. We can talk about that later. That six-stage model basically came from that understanding of how to write a book. So those are my three things. And so this book has allowed me to converse with you about what you wanted to see, but I brought a couple tools along to help us write. So that was it.
Well, thank you. I certainly see, yes, the intersection, if, so to speak, between your coming to this question of something and of nothing and mine, though the intersection is very, very slight because you have so much more experience and knowledge, frankly, to speak to what the ancients thought. My knowledge set is really, it's a sliver. It's restricted to the scientific, the scientific, right? And what we have come to term the maybe more correctly the popular science, right?
Right.
So the science that we've all heard of, maybe understand to some degree, right? But maybe don't really understand what its physical consequences are, but also its philosophical consequences.
Right.
So I did graduate work in the history and philosophy of science after doing an undergraduate in engineering, knowing that I never really liked the particulars of science. I didn't like studying the details. I just really had these questions about, like, what is science doing? Where is it? Is it evolving towards what, right? I've had many influences, throughout my graduate work, but I'd say none has been more influential to me than Thomas Kuhn, and specifically his structures of scientific revolutions.
Huh.
Without getting into that, we'll push that aside. The impetus, though, our journey with Rodney started 5 years ago. But the impetus for doing the book I'd have to say I pinpointed at a book written by one of these popularizers of science, Lawrence Krauss. In 2012, he wrote a book entitled "A Universe from Nothing."
Right.
And when I picked the book up, I read the book, or I look at the title, and I see something that makes me smirk, right? A scientist, because what is the immediate, what is it that Krauss is trying to imply here, just with this title? Well, how I read it, and I could be wrong, maybe you guys can help me here. I believe that he's implying that a universe does not need a God. A universe from nothing. Okay? That's what I read from that title. And by actually picking up the book and reading through it, I get a strong sense that, yes, in fact, that is what Krauss is trying to tell us, that a universe does not need a God. Okay. Now, whether that's true or not is, he can believe what he believes, and I can believe what I want to believe, right? And it's perfectly okay for Lawrence Krauss to be able to tell us what he believes and be as convincing as possible, bring as much evidence as he wants to the table. The problem, and what irked me so by reading that title and that book, was that at no point did he tell us, the reader, that what he was trying to say, right? You know, when he's discussing, you know, when he's bringing science to the data to light, is that he is espousing a belief, right? And not that the science, you know, yields this physical conclusion, this conclusion about the cosmos that, well, now we have the evidence to determine that the universe doesn't need a God, right? And so we can sort of close the book on all that sort of you know, religion and theology, hooey, right? It's obvious that just based on looking at the evidence, right? Based on just, you know, with applying the scientific method, we can arrive to the conclusion that the universe does not need a God. And that I feel is dishonest, right? And if I'm charitable, I'll say reckless, right? In what he's doing, you know, he could have been just it could have been an oversight, a gross oversight. But I don't feel that that's the case. I can say that I can be generous, right? But if you write a book at length and not stop to qualify some of the statements that you make, you know, I believe that a rebuttal, right, is needed, and so that's what Nothing and Nothingness is trying to do. So that, reverting back to that opening syllogism, when Krauss says a universe from nothing, what I hope to demonstrate is that it's not a universe from nothing, but it's a universe from something resembling nothing. And if we need to find a word, because something resembling nothing is verbose, let's compactify that and say something resembling nothing could be a nothingness. How about that? Nothingness. Yeah. If you look up the word nothingness in the dictionary, nothingness is a state of nothing.
Right. That's right.
State of being nothing. Right? So, but a state, you see that implicit in that is that a state is something, correct?
Right.
And if Krauss, or anybody else for that matter, were to sort of come to me and say, you know what, you know, I think that the universe, I think that science tells us that the universe came from a nothingness, I wouldn't have a problem with that. That seems perfectly fine. In fact, I embrace that. That's a wonderful thing for science to be able to demonstrate. I'd love to see how, and you know, having looked at the evidence, you know, at least as far as the popular books demonstrate, it seems legitimate. It seems that yeah, all you need is a vacuum and the laws of physics, and you can get the universe to come from that that from those two things, right?
Right.
At least the
Right.
universe that we can currently sort of understand, right?
Right.
And
Right.
that's a key asterisk that I'm not going to draw that out, but that's key, right? So the universe that we can comprehend, right? It seems that the universe can come from a nothingness, and I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
So yeah, I guess the one thing is that Krauss, if you read the book, right, he qualifies, right, nothing, right, as and I think that Rodney, you've read the book too. You see that that he uses it a little bit loosely, right? For one page, he's talking about this nothingness, and another time he's talking about this nothingness, like the vacuum energy and virtual particles, and what else? Quantum fluctuations. Yeah. All of these things get thrown around, and he replaces this scientific terminology with nothing, right? Right. And what I want to say, and I think that any person that reads this would be kind of left scratching their heads, ordinarily, thinking, well, wait a second, quantum fluctuations, vacuum energy, virtual particles, those things don't sound like nothing after you describe what they are. They sound like something. That's natural, right? But it's I'd say insidious. The insidiousness of Krauss, right? Keep pushing it to you that no, these are nothing. This is nothing. This is nothing. This is nothing. Why are they sort of pushing that, right? So I guess maybe I'll throw it back to you. Do you see? I guess you've read Krauss too. What have your experience been of Krauss?
Well, he's everywhere, and so he's quite a presence, Krauss, and he has. His new book is the greatest story ever told as of yet, which continues with this sort of. There's a lot of things about him, and he has endless YouTube lectures and videos and things with hundreds of thousands of views. He's everywhere within the science culture, everywhere within the popular science culture. He's one of the stars, and that's why we call him a pop star. So there's a lot of things that can be said about him that are. I found when I read him closely, one of the things that I found not only with Krauss, but a lot of the popularizers of science, is that they bring in the reader by making religious references, like the greatest story ever told, or why is there something and not nothing? And they deny, and Krauss said very, very clearly at the end of Universe of Nothing that I think I've made a good case for the possibility that life could have come from, that manifestation could have come from nothing, and there's no need for a God in it. So he's very clearly saying there's no need for a God, and he aligns himself many ways with the new atheists in that. In fact, the new atheists praise Krauss a lot. And one of the things that I found that it permeates the popularizers, but Krauss is the head of that, is they use religious images. They use the images and the stories and the concepts of religion to deepen the reader's understanding of the subject they're covering.
Interesting. Yeah.
All the while denying that religion has any meaning. And I found that, I think you were talking about the kind of insidious quality. I found that to be unethical. Mm-hmm. If you're going to use if you're going to use in your reading and in your writing the images and myths of religion to deepen your subject, you can at the same time say that those images and myths and stories have no meaning. And so that was one of the things that I noticed, and that was why within the book there we did a very kind of point by point analysis, disintegration really of Krauss in that book title. I think we spent about 5 pages just going into that book title and seeing how it was misusing the potency of religion and philosophy, all the while saying that it had no meaning. So that was one of the things that struck me about him. Although he's very personable, he's a very personable guy.
Yeah.
But I think he misuses his knowledge.
I think so. Misdirected too. But that's for, you know, that you can say is subjective, right? And hopefully, I mean, we don't care, or we care, but we don't plan to attack anybody's beliefs systems, right? Because just, you know, that seems like it's something that's you know, somewhat not sacred, right? But like it's something that should be that whatever the case may be, right? It should be something that an individual sort of come to their own conclusion about, right?
Right.
You might want to help somebody along, right? To show them, you know, how what you believe might be more consistent with everything that we know, right? But ultimately, it seems like that's a personal choice. However, again, right, we need to sort of you know, distinguish, right, demarcate between beliefs, right, and science. Clearly demarcate between those two. Right. And know, you know, okay, here's where we can sort of bring scientific evidence to the fore and say, this is why this isn't a matter of belief. This is a matter of knowledge. This is what we know. So don't try to tell me, here's what you believe. No, knowledge in this case trumps, you know, belief. And that's fine. Those are, you know, there's tact in how you might want to sort of, you know, expose that, right? Because ultimately you want people, right? You want to sort of embrace people. You want to bring them to the center, right? And so it becomes a question of, like, you know, doing it in the most effective way possible, right? Presenting the information, or either, you know, the knowledge in the most effective way possible.
Right. That's right.
But right, let it be known where the science ends and where your beliefs begin.
Okay. Good.
And with, I guess with that, one last thing, right? Just to I guess make this distinction clear that I thought about when you know, Krauss is nothing, right? So if we were to define Krauss as nothing, right, it would be as empty as can experimentally be determined, for instance, right?
That's right.
And then there is the nothing that most of us of this world sort of use in our minds, and we reserve that word nothing to mean as empty as can be imagined, right? So from Krauss is trying to convince you to use his definition, right, which is as empty as can be experimentally verified. Right. The common sense is not that. The common sense is as empty as can be imagined.
Right.
Okay? And I think what Rodney and I want is something different. We don't think that's sufficient, right? And because it's always in reference to nothing being something, right? As nothing as far as we can imagine, right? So what we want to do is just to leave it short and maybe, I guess, talk around nothing, right? And leave it as maybe as cryptic as nothing is not, and that's it. That's that's the most truthful thing that we can sort of say about nothing itself, right? That it is not anything else.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess with that, there wasn't something else that I wanted to come up to bring out, but maybe we'll leave it at that, because I think that's a good place to. When did we shot? We got to half an hour. That's easily digestible. No.
That was good.
Are you good with that? Is there something else that you wanted to say? No?
No, I'm fine. I'll just reflect on whatever you ask a question. I'll do my best.
Okay, great. So I think that what we'll do then is every week we will pick up our book, Nothing and Nothingness, and we will read not an entire section. We will read a subsection, and we will try to. Rodney and I first, right? We'll try to like sort of write notes and ask questions to the other, right, about it, and then we'll bring those notes and those questions to you every Tuesday or thereabouts. We'll be recording on Tuesday. We'll probably be publishing sometime later, but that's what we plan to do. Sound good?
Cool. Sounds like fun. I look forward to it.
As do I. All right. That.
Right.
See ya.
Entering the Universe has been brought to you by the Society of Namecoin. Until next time, no.